Okay. All right, everyone. We are going to begin with our spiritual bread today. We are continuing, and it looks like it's actually three parts. Last week we started with a series on possessing your peace. And we're going to continue from there. I have notes all over the place. Okay. So, last week we were looking at the source of your peace. And I stated that as long as we see peace as being absent of conflict, that peace will be elusive to us because we'd be waiting for all the conflict to stop so that we can be in peace. So we were talking about that last week. We also established that we're not lacking peace, that we were qualified and made fit to be the containers of the fullness of God, and that as Jesus is, so are we in this world. And so we had said that, I had said that if there's no lack in Jesus, there's no lack in us, because as Jesus is, so are we. And that we looked at the fact that the scriptures reveal that the chastisement of our peace was upon him, and that he won that fight for peace in the Garden of Gethsemane. And now in part 2, I'll open with this statement, and that is, the foundation of peace was purchased and begins with God. We established that. But in the absence of courage, even that which we have will not be experienced. So we're going to be looking at this courage that it takes to experience the peace so we can possess it. Okay, so like I said, I now have uploaded the teaching from last week on YouTube, on our YouTube channel. So you'll be able to access teachings if you want to go back over the word and make the connections so that you can hear it back to back. You're able to do that. So this will be uploaded this week. Today's teaching will be uploaded. And again, we're going to try to keep those things together so that you can go over it again. So having established the origin of peace in Christ, we're going to look at where courage begins. And if we look back just prior to Christ's fight for our peace in the garden, in John chapters 14, 15, and 16. St. John. Saint. That's just the book of John. The book of John, chapters 14, 15, and 16. There is a pattern of words that we'll see spoken from Jesus, and we hear him saying this to his disciples to aid their courage. So since we're looking at the courage needed to possess the peace, we're going to take a look at what those words were that he spoke that was able to aid their courage, because we need to be courageous to reach for our peace. When we were worshiping today, a part of you writing down what area what area have you struggled with where it seems like whenever it shows up, it robs you of peace? What is that? Identify what that is, because we want to apply the things that Jesus reveals to it, so that even if spiritually we declare that there were things that were broken, so we can break out of that place, we want to walk consistently with our expectations. So we want to draw from that. Okay, so let's look at the one phrase before we get into the pattern of phrases that you hear Jesus speak. I want to look at this phrase, being have a good courage. Okay, we hear. We've seen this throughout Scripture, throughout the Old Testament. They're told to be of a good courage. And I'm going to connect that with the New Testament. But the good courage, the Hebrew words that are used, there are two Hebrew words that are used for courage. And one of those words means to fortify, to be steadfastly minded. Okay, so steadfast in the thinking, steadfastly minded. The other Hebrew word used for courage means to prevail, to become strong, to grow firm, to be resolute. Okay, so there are two Hebrew words here that together we find its meaning in the New Testament when Jesus says, be of good cheer. Whenever you see that, depending on what version, they say be of good cheer, be of good comfort. But that phrase, and it was particular when Jesus spoke it. When Jesus said be of good cheer, he used particular words in the Greek that carried the meaning of good courage. It didn't mean like other writers when they speak of cheer, you think of being merry. It's like everything's about to fall apart. Be merry. That's not what it means when Jesus is telling them to be of good courage, because there are some things that are about to completely change their life. Okay? And it may even come across as devastating, because again, chapters 14, 15, and 16 is just prior to his death. It's just days before, or the day before his death. So he knew what was coming up, and he was going to tell them to be of good cheer. So again, that Greek word does not mean merry, it means good courage. So he's telling them to fortify themselves, be steadfastly minded, be resolute, become strong. Okay, that's actually what he's going to challenge the disciples to do. And that's what I'm telling you, that the Lord wants you to be challenged to be steadfast in thinking, be steadfastly minded, to fortify your thoughts. And that's precisely the area where you have to be fortified in order to possess your peace. So John chapter 14 verse 1, and I believe that my verses here are taken from the Amplified, but I do have a combination of things going. But John 14 chapter 1, it says, do not let your hearts be troubled. And then I'm going to kind of jump through this first verse. Believe in, adhere to, trust in, rely on me. He said, do not let your hearts be troubled. The fact that he says do not let says that you control it. But what we're also seeing here is the beginning of peace in this verse. It says, believe in, adhere to, trust in, and rely on me. Definitely the Amplified version. See, when it comes to the issues that we have with our peace, it really starts with the fact that we have trust problems, trust issues. Oftentimes people have trust issues because they may have experienced abandonment, or something may have happened where they got burned, they trusted somebody and they were let down, or maybe they let other people down. But oftentimes people have trust issues. So what we're going to find here is that the beginning of peace really starts with being able to trust in and rely on Jesus, the one who purchased. As we said, he battled for it in the garden. But we have to trust him. If you struggle with trust, you will also struggle with peace. If you have trust issues, you have peace issues. And you can't deal with the peace issues without dealing with the trust issues. Okay, so trust is really the beginning of where you start to address any issues that you may have with possessing peace in particular areas. Isaiah 26:3, you don't have to turn there, but you can write it down. Isaiah 26:3, it says, he will keep you in perfect peace, whose mind is stayed on me, because he trusts in me. Okay? So, you notice that it says, whose mind is stayed. That is a part of the definition of being of good courage. Be steadfastly minded. Okay, so one's mind has to be steadied, be resolute. But the ability to do that is because you trust in him. He will keep you in perfect peace. And it begins with trust in Him. If you trust in Him, He's able to stabilize your mind. What is that? Philippians, it says, Philippians chapter 4, very popular verse. Be anxious for nothing, but in everything by prayer. And I like the Amplified version on that. By prayer and fasting, make your requests known unto God, and He will, and the Amplified talks about Him garrison and mount guard around your heart or mind. The peace of God is able to put up a hedge around you. When we were worshiping earlier, I was speaking and I was talking about the peace, and I was using the color white because it's the color that reflects the peace, and I was saying hedges. Okay, because when we turn things over to God and we trust in Him, the peace of God hedges us. It garrisons and mounts guard around our heart and mind. But to pray or to come to Him, to put that before Him, is to trust Him. You're giving it to Him. Okay, so again, I'm going to say that trust, if you have trust issues, you have peace issues. If you deal with the trust issues, it will address the peace issues. You control the flow of peace in your life. John 14 and verse 27. We're in 14 and 1. Now we're looking at verse 27. You control the flow of peace. It says, and Jesus is speaking here. He says, peace I leave with you. My own peace I now give and bequeath to you. Not as the world gives do I give to you. I want to pause there. Not as the world gives do I give to you. I talked about trust issues. So we had some things that have happened to us, and we have some of the effects from dealing with things in the world as they have been happening. They become a barrier to us. And he had to tell, Jesus had to say, I leave peace, but I don't leave it like the world does it. It is different. There's a distinction. Not as the world gives do I give it to you. And then he goes on, do not let your hearts be troubled. See, I said that there is a language or a pattern of words that you'll hear Jesus say to aid the disciples in their courage. The first time he said, do not let your hearts be troubled. Trust in me. Rely on me. This next time he says, do not let your hearts be troubled. Neither let them be afraid. And the Amplified blows it out like this from the words that are used there. It says, stop allowing yourselves to be agitated and disturbed, and do not permit yourselves to be fearful and intimidated and cowardly and unsettled. I'm going to say that again. That's a mouthful. Because this is what Jesus is saying. Because we have stuff that falls into these categories. It says, stop allowing yourselves to be agitated and disturbed. Do not permit yourselves to be fearful and intimidated and cowardly and unsettled. You control the flow of peace. Because it's a choice that you're going to make. You control the flow. He bequeathed it. Okay? He bequeathed, and he had, in the 14th chapter, he hadn't fought for it yet. But he bequeathed it. And you know what? In order to receive something that's been bequeathed to you, there has to be a death so that you can receive it. Okay? So he was setting us up. He's like, look, I know what I'm getting ready to face off. I bequeathed it to you. I give it to you. I fought for it. I give it to you. Okay? So he says, okay, I leave my peace with you. I give my peace. I bequeath it to you. And verse 29, it says, and now I have told you before it come to pass, that when it is come to pass, you might believe. I have told you. Okay, so here I'm dealing with this pattern. Do not let your heart be troubled. Do not let your heart be troubled. Now he's going to start the I have told you. I have told you. And he said the reason why he told them, the things that he was revealing to them about what would be coming to challenge their peace. This was the subject matter. It was going to come and it was going to challenge. It was going to rock their world. He said, I told you ahead of time, before it come to pass, that when it comes to pass, you might believe. He knows that challenges are going to be coming. That the enemy is going to come and try to make you think that everything that God has tried to establish in your understanding, every revelation that he has given to you, he's going to try to make it seem like it has no value. It was just something interesting that happened that day. It was a nice day. It was a nice service. It was a good time. It's more than that. And he's saying, you know, you're going to need to hold on. Be steadfastly minded. Because there is a time coming. There's a day just ahead where these things are going to come. But I'm telling you ahead of time that I have already secured you. Trust in me. So then if we look at chapter 15, verse 11, it says, I have told you these things. Here we go again. You seeing the pattern? I have told you these things. Why? That my joy and delight may be in you. Or the New King James Version says, that my joy might remain in you. I've told you these things. You can go ahead and read 14, 15, and 16. Instructions to the disciples. What has he said? I've told you these things that my joy might remain in you. He's not just saying things to be saying it. But if we lay hold to it and we trust him, it'll remain. When things get difficult, when things get tough, it will remain. But we have to lay hold to it. Okay, so he says, and that your joy and gladness may be full of full measure and complete and overflowing. Again, amplified. I've told you these things, that my joy may be in you, and that your joy and gladness may be full and complete and overflowing. Okay, it's not about everything going right. What? Jesus said, for the joy that was set before him, he went through, and he despised the shame. We talked about that in the previous message, about despising the shame, being that he did not give the value to it. He devalued it. Sometimes we amplify the negative, the shame, the problem, the challenge, but he did not amplify that, but for the joy. He wants our joy to be full. So again, that's going to take us being resolute, okay, which is where courage is. Okay, that is the courage. All right, so John 16, verse 33. And he says, these things I have spoken unto you. He's still telling, like I'm telling you why I'm saying these things. These things I have spoken unto you, that in me you may have peace. In the world you shall have tribulation, but be of good cheer. That was not be merry. Okay? The word, the meaning it carried was be of good courage. I have overcome the world. Now again, I said he hadn't gone to the cross. He was on his way to the cross. He was setting things up. I'm telling you stuff ahead of time. This is, you're right on the cusp of this. Some things are about to break out, and it's going to happen, and it's going to rock your world. Matter of fact, we know what happened with Peter. When they showed up in the garden after he finished praying, when they showed up, he was ready to fight. But when he realized, wait a minute, now hold on. Why are your hands down? Why isn't anybody fighting? Because they were still thinking the natural. They were still, with all that he said, with all that Jesus tried to tell them ahead of time, they still need to catch up. Okay? And they weren't ready. Yet, he told them, I'm telling you ahead of time. And you know, it did come a moment where they realized that's what that was. But for a minute, you know what? If you knew that you were going to be experiencing something over the weekend that would look like it is impossible, but that on Monday it'll be like none of that ever happened. It's getting to the Monday. It's getting to the day where it all makes sense. Sometimes it's tough because when you're in that weekend, when you're in those days where everything seems like it's going completely upside down, it doesn't appear in the natural that it is good or anything good can come from it. You know, people have lost their lives or have taken their lives even. Lost their lives, taken their lives because someone gave them some incorrect information. And they didn't live long enough to see that was not correct. I remember recently, my husband, he was challenged by something, and I mean, it was really challenging for him. And I looked at him and I said, "Have you been here before?" He said, "Yeah." I said, "Did you get past it?" He said, "Yeah." I said, "This too will pass." You know, how many times have you in your life faced impossible stuff and got on the other side of it? Okay, so he wants us to focus in on the fact that there is an other side. And then he talks to us about the other side. He already talked to us about the victory that is already there. He's talked to us about the peace that is already there for us. And he said, "Hang on to me. Hang on to me." Okay, so be of good cheer. So sometimes we are so, I guess I want to say, okay, sometimes we are so concerned about being liked in a situation or not wanting to embarrass ourselves in a situation that we fail to be courageous, okay, and follow after peace. It can be in a statement. It could be that everybody's taking a conversation in a certain way, and you have the words of life to change that conversation, but lack the courage in the moment to say the things that was going to bring life. But we want to follow after peace. Whatever it is that peace can be operated through us in a situation, we want to be able to do that. Courage, it doesn't just happen. It is a path that is chosen. So if we go back and we look at what Jesus said when he was talking in his prayer, and he said, "My Father, if this thing can pass by, if this thing cannot pass by unless I drink it, then your will be done." He wanted to, can anything else happen? But he was purchasing our peace. That's why I said courage doesn't just happen. It happens with a choice. Okay? And he had to choose. He choose the path of peace for us. We have an abundance of Christ's peace in our born again spirit. We've been saying that. But Jesus also said in that prayer that he was praying, he said, "The spirit is willing." He said, "But the flesh is weak." So it's not a weakness in your spirit. It's not a weakness in what he has given you. It's dealing with the flesh. And the flesh is affected by the things that are going on in the mind. And so the mind needs to be steady. We need to be steadfast minded. We need to be resolute, but that's going to take knowing who we trust. Okay, so we started with the source. We started with knowing the source of the peace, where that came from. And we've been looking today at controlling the flow of our peace. That he gave us things ahead of time and that there is a response. So we're not without. Whatever it is that you might be, whatever you wrote down, I don't know what you wrote down. But I challenge you to find out what God has to say about what you wrote down. Because he said something ahead of time. Look at what he has to say and then focus in on that and become strong and resolute in that. And when the challenge, if it's something that keeps coming up and robbing your peace, because sometimes it's in the form of people. Okay. And when that comes up, just say the thing that's the truth that addresses that situation. Say what God has said. God, I trust you. Here they come again. God, I trust you. And so I'm gonna actually pause here. So it's up to us to agree with who we are and become resolute and prevail. That's the courage to possess what is ours. Okay, becoming resolute despite what's going on. But I said that I was going to say something. This is that moment. Okay. Okay. So, and I'm saying this. Some might be hearing this again for a second time. But wherever it is that you are called to, whatever space, whatever wherever you work, whatever region, whatever it is that you are, okay, you carry with you an assignment in that place. And as prophets, hear me now, because I know to whom I speak. You don't have to look around. Yeah, you in the back kitchen too.
Yeah, you in the back kitchen too.
As prophets, and I know that, you know, we're different levels of understanding of what that is and operating and all that. But as prophets, in those spaces, there are things that you need to say. I had mentioned to Denise that the Lord has said you're a gatekeeper in those spaces. You are a gatekeeper, and you are to be focused, because the enemy comes to try to knock you off your square, because he does not want you to fulfill your assignment. He does not want you to understand the power that you have in the situation to change things that are not seen. But don't get caught up in what the ways of the world. The things are happening on the surface. And we walk by faith. That's not surface. That's another dimension. We walk in another dimension. So when you're in those places, as representatives, as gatekeepers, as people that are called and assigned to those places, walk as though you know that. Don't walk like stuff is happening to you. God wanted to be seen. Don't walk as if stuff is just happening to you. Okay, you come in and you happen to everybody else. Don't get twisted. I don't care what's going on. You take authority in those places. You are there to bless. You are there to deliver. You are there to set people free. You're there to bring the kingdom into those places. It's time that you walk as if you know that. It will change your attitude. It'll change the way you do work. It'll change your expectation. It will change the situation. We walk after the Spirit, not after the flesh. So, that was the part 2 on peace. There's a part 3. And that's where we're going to actually meet those challenges. So we anticipate that next week. I know some of you will be with us, but again, we will record and we will make sure that we get that posted so that you get that third part and that you'll be blessed by it.